The ride home was quiet. The city lights blurred past the window, but Victoria barely noticed them. What was supposed to be a beautiful evening had left her with an uneasy feeling in her spirit. Nash seemed kind, successful, thoughtful, but somewhere between the violin music, the ocean breeze, something had changed. He crossed a line she wasn't willing to move. And that mattered. As soon as she stepped inside her home, Victoria headed to the one place where she could always be completely honest, her secret place. The bathroom door clicked shut behind her. No audience, no explanation, no pretending, just her and God. She sank to her knees, tears filling her eyes. Lord, I don't understand why this keeps happening. The words hung in the air. I thought maybe this time would be different. Victoria wiped her face and took a shaky breath. I don't need someone to impress me. I don't need someone to rescue me. I just want someone who respects me, someone who honors you. The room grew still. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of her own breathing. Then a familiar peace began to settle over her heart. Not because she had all the answers, not because the disappointment suddenly disappeared, but because she knew she wasn't facing it alone. Slowly, Victoria lifted her head. Maybe this wasn't rejection. Maybe it was protection. Maybe God had allowed her to see what she needed to see before she became emotionally invested. A small smile appeared through the tears. Grandma used to say that bamboo spends years growing beneath the surface before anyone sees the first sign of life. Maybe God was still working beneath the surface of her story, building roots, building strength, building something that would be worth the wait. Victoria closed her eyes and whispered, Father, if it's not your best for me, I don't want it. Teach me to trust you, even when I don't understand the process. And for the first time that night, her heart again felt lighter. Not because her circumstances had changed, but because her perspective had. She rose from the floor, wiped away her tears, and looked at her reflection. The disappointment was still there, but so was her faith. And tonight, faith was enough. The next morning was Sunday morning, and Victoria found herself right where she was every Sunday morning, church. The worship music filled the sanctuary, but this morning she wasn't focused on the songs. She was focused on surviving. The tears she had been holding back all week finally began to fall. First her cousin, then the funeral, then the disappointment with Nash. It felt as though every time she took one step forward, life pushed her back two steps. Victoria lifted her hands toward heaven. Lord, what am I doing wrong? The question wasn't spoken aloud, but God heard it anyway. She prayed. She waited. She had tried to do things the right way, yet somehow she still found herself hurting, still finding herself disappointed, still wondering when her season would finally change. As worship continued, Victoria closed her eyes. Images from the last few months flashed through her mind. The promotion, the recognition, the blessings God had already provided. Yet somehow the pain kept trying to convince her that none of it mattered, that she was still standing at the same starting line she had been standing on for years. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. The enemy wanted her to focus on what went wrong. God wanted her to remember what he had already brought her through. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another, and another. Father, I'm tired. For the first time, she stopped pretending to be strong. I'm tired of hurting. I'm tired of losing people. I'm tired of disappointment. I'm tired of wondering when my life is finally going to settle down. The worship team continued singing, and somewhere in the middle of her brokenness, a scripture rose in her spirit. Do not grow weary in well doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Victoria took a deep breath. Due season? Not her season, his season. Maybe she wasn't back at the beginning. Maybe she was simply in the middle where nothing made sense, the middle where faith was tested, the middle where God was still working, even when she couldn't see it. Her grandmother's words came back to her once again. Bamboo spends years developing roots before anyone sees the evidence of growth. Nobody applauds the roots. Nobody celebrates the underground season. But with the roots, the bamboo could never support the height God intended for it. Victoria slowly opened her eyes. The questions were still there. The grief was still there. So was God. And for this moment, that was enough. She lifted her hands a little higher and whispered, Lord, I don't understand everything you're doing, but I trust you. Victoria closed the front door behind her and set her purse on the coffee table. Church had helped, and worship had helped, but there was still something nudging at her. She sat on the couch and let out a long breath. That's when she picked up her phone. 6 missed calls, all from Nash. Victoria stared at the screen. For a moment, she considered deleting the notifications and moving on. Instead, she pressed his number. The phone rang once, then twice. Nash speaking. Hi, Nash. His voice immediately changed. Victoria, thank God I've been trying to reach you all morning. Listen, about last night. Nash? Her tone was calm. What is it that you want to say? I just wanted to explain what happened. There is no explanation. The words were firm but not harsh. Victoria, I was trying to. There is no acceptable reason for what happened. The line grew quiet. You crossed a boundary. A long pause followed. I said I was sorry, and I accept your apology. Victoria shifted on the couch. But accepting your apology doesn't mean I'm ignoring what happened. Victoria, can we just start over? No. The answer came without hesitation. No, we can't. Silence filled the line. Victoria looked across the room, gathering her thoughts. What I want to say to you is simple. This is done. Nash, please do not call me anymore. Do not text me anymore. It was nice seeing you again after all these years. Thank you for dinner, but whatever this was going to be ends here. His voice softened. So that's really it? Yes, it's really it. Another pause. Then she added, You enjoy your life, and I'm going to enjoy mine. For the first time since the yacht, Victoria felt completely certain. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. Goodbye, Nash. A few seconds passed before he answered. Goodbye, Victoria. The call ended. Victoria placed the phone beside her and leaned back in against the couch. For the first time all weekend, there was nothing left to say, nothing left to explain, nothing left to wonder about. It was over, and somehow that felt like peace. Monday morning arrived. Victoria walked toward work, her purse resting on her shoulder as the city buzzed around her. People rushed past. Traffic moved steadily through the streets. Another workday had begun. But Victoria's thoughts were still stuck on the weekend. Her cousin's funeral, the yacht, Nash, the phone call, the disappointment. Everything seemed to be happening all at once. She tried to focus on the day ahead, but her mind kept drifting back to everything she had lost, everything she had hoped for, and everything she still didn't understand. Sometimes it feels like life was one long lesson, one test after another, one storm after another. She quietly whispered, Lord, help me make sense of all of this. Just then, a horn sounded behind her. Victoria kept walking. Then she turned around. A familiar white Mercedes Benz S Class rolled slowly alongside the curb. The passenger rolled down the window. Hey, Victoria. It was Colleen. Where are you headed to? Work, she says. Come on, let me give you a ride. No, that's okay. I'm gonna walk. Girl, if you don't get in this car. Victoria couldn't help but laugh. Colleen leaned across the seat, shaking her head. I know you saw me. The smile finally appeared on Victoria's face. Good morning to you, too. Colleen looked her over. You look like you've been carrying the weight of the whole world. Victoria sighed. Some days it feels like I am. Get in. Colleen, get in. Victoria said, No, I need to walk this off. But thanks for the offer anyway. Okay, not a problem, Colleen said. It isn't. Trust me. I need the time to think, Victoria said. I understand. All righty then. You have a good day, Colleen said, and drove off. Thanks again, Victoria said, looking at the Mercedes Benz S Class. She had a thought. I've got to get me a car. That is one nice car. Victoria decided that since she was a bit early this Monday morning, that she would go ahead and stop in the coffee shop. She did not mind having a nice caramel macchiato. Oh, yeah, the thought of that sounded good. So to the coffee shop she went. The smell of fresh coffee filled the shop as Victoria stepped into the line. Now this is life, she thought. No phone calls, no drama, no difficult conversations, just coffee. When it was her turn, she smiled politely. One caramel macchiato, please. A few minutes later, she stood near the pickup counter waiting for her order. As people chattered around her, Victoria found herself staring out the window. Life was moving. People were laughing, going to work, running errands, living their lives, and somehow that comforted her. Maybe everything didn't have to be figured out today. Maybe today she could simply take the next step. Caramel macchiato for Victoria? She smiled, picked up her drink, and headed to the door. One step at a time. That was enough. The moment Victoria stepped through the coffee shop door, she collided with someone. Her caramel macchiato flew from her hand. Coffee splashed across her cream blouse. Oh my goodness. Victoria jumped back, staring down at the stain spreading across the front of her shirt. I'm so sorry, a voice said. She was already preparing to apologize herself when she looked up. Something about the man's face seemed familiar. Very familiar. Then it clicked. The plumber, the one who had came to her house, the one who had fixed her sink. Victoria blinked. You? The man laughed nervously. Yeah, me. He glanced at the coffee running down her blouse and shook his head. definitely my fault. Victoria couldn't help but laugh despite her frustration. The situation was too ridiculous. The man extended his hand. Logan. Victoria's eyes dropped to the name stitched on his uniform. Logan. For the first time, she knew the plumber's name. Logan, she repeated. I'm really sorry about your coffee. Let me buy you another one. Victoria looked down at her stained blouse. No, the coffee isn't the problem, she sighed. I've got to go home and change clothes before I can get to work. Logan looked genuinely concerned. Well, then, let me take you home. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Take me home? Yes. He shrugged. My truck is right there. Then he smiled. Considering I caused this disaster, it's the least I can do. Victoria found herself smiling and said, Okay. This was definitely not how she expected her Monday to begin. Victoria sat quietly in the passenger seat as Logan pulled away from the curb. The truck smelled faintly of motor oil, coffee, and clean laundry. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Victoria stared out the window. What am I doing here? The thought appeared out of nowhere. Just 2 days ago, she had been on the boat with Nash. Now she's riding through town in a plumber's work van. Her mind immediately went back to the weekend. The disappointment, the phone call, everything felt complicated. She took a slow breath. Calm down, Victoria. He's just taking you home so you can change your clothes. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Beside her, Logan glanced over briefly before returning his attention to the road. How was the funeral? Victoria looked down at her hands. Okay. The answer was short, but Logan seemed to understand there was more behind it. A few seconds passed, then he said, You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Victoria let out a small laugh. Logan glanced over. What? She shook her head. That's funny. What is? I've already heard that today. A smile tugged at the corner of Logan's mouth. Well, whoever said it first was right. Victoria found herself smiling. Maybe not carrying the weight of the world, but definitely carrying more than she wanted to admit.